We all experience challenging and difficult situations in life. In the face of these complexities, it is not always clear how to respond, what to do, or what to avoid. It's easy to get stuck in these moments and stop moving forward in life. Wholeness with Naomi is a program that explores our experiences with such encounters and provides tools and strategies that can enable anyone facing these hardships to continue walking their path in life. We can't wait to meet you on this journey. Tune in, your life is about to change for the better.
Welcome to the show, Wholeness with Naomi, where we discuss issues affecting life. We are looking at spiritual, physical, and all the emotional issues that we encounter as we go through life. And more importantly, giving you tools to be able to overcome and walk through the journey. Today in show, we're going to be discussing one of the issues that we face as we go through life, which is the loss of a loved one. Today we're going to be discussing about grief. What is grief? How do you process it? How do you walk in it? And how do you find acceptance of it at the end of that journey? Today in show, we have Ms. Danai Magande. Welcome to the show, Ms. Danai.
Thank you, Naomi. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Today we're going to be having a life testimony. Ms. Danai Magande is sharing her life with us of what she encountered with the loss of a loved one and how she managed to walk the journey to where she is now. Ms. Danai Magande, do tell us, do share with us what happened to you.
Okay, so my name is Danai. I have got 6 children. I like to introduce myself like that. Then you'll understand why. So I have 5 here on earth and 1 who is in heaven. We had twins in 2019, a boy and a girl.
Okay.
Okay, this was my 5th pregnancy and a very big surprise for us. So we were so ready for the journey to have 2 babies in the house, and we went all out. We even did a gender reveal.
Wow.
And yes, we were very excited.
Yes.
Went into labor. In May, crazy enough, I drove myself to hospital, not knowing that I was actually in labor. And, you know, we were blessed with 2 babies, but my experience was very different thereafter.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I lay in the hospital bed waiting for my babies, and the babies were not being brought to me.
Okay. So this was both of them?
Yes, both of them. I started, fighting to the point of, I want my babies here. And then that's when my doctor came in with my husband, and then they started to explain to me that the babies were there, but we had a girl who had a bilateral cleft lip and palate and some medical conditions. I then just asked for them to bring the babies, and I mean, for me, the biggest relief was my baby was there, and we would deal with whatever came along the way.
Okay. So if I could just hold you there, Ms. Danai, this is something that you discovered on delivery. It wasn't picked up during pregnancy.
Nothing. We went for scans, we went for everything. Everything was fine according to the doctors.
How did you feel in that moment that this news was being broken to you by the doctor? You know, every mother is expecting to see her children after delivery. Initially, it was the babies were not given to you as expected, and then also getting the news that one of the twins had a complication. How did it make you feel, Danai?
Okay, I believe my grief journey started then, because grief really is the loss of anything, not just the loss of a loved one, but it's the pain that you go through when you lose something. So for us, that was where we lost the hope of having 2 healthy babies, We found ourselves with one who was not well. But I think for me the distress was more of the way the babies were withheld. I think I probably grieved. I thought I'd lost my babies, So when I knew that they were actually there, and even though there were complications, I was willing to say, okay, it's a different route, it's a different journey, but I'm willing to walk that journey.
How did life change for you, like in your day-to-day routines? How was it like for you taking care of your twins?
Oh, it was a big life change. I always say the verse Philippians 4:13, I can do all through Christ strengthens me. I lived that. I lived that because I didn't know the strength that I had. I had one baby who was breastfed, one who had to be bottle fed. I had to express milk at a certain time. I was up from 5 in the morning through to probably midnight, you know. And because our baby was a special baby, we had to keep her warm because she was a preemie to some extent. We had to keep her away from people because we didn't want her getting infections. And so my life revolved around my bedroom a lot, and some part the hospital. It was really difficult, but I don't know, the strength, like I say, Philippians 4:13 is something that I testify to say I lived that. When, you know, I look at people and someone's like, I didn't sleep, I feel like this, I'm like, guys, sleep is luxury.
It sounded, you know, it's just sharing that it's something that you'd come to a point of acceptance that this is what my child has, and we're going to move through it all. What happened, Danai?
Yes. So unfortunately, you know, like I said, she had complications and we were in and out of hospital. And unfortunately in September, the 19th of September 2019, she started struggling to breathe. We ended up in hospital, but that day we didn't come back home with her.
I'm sorry. That must have been very tough for you and the family.
It was. It was. I mean, we were so ready for the journey. And it was a 4-month journey. And yeah, it just brought a lot of confusion, a lot of, Lord, we were ready. Why did she have to go? Yeah.
I am sorry for the loss of your baby, Danai. What was her name?
Her name is Shumiro. It's interesting. We gave her that name not knowing that that really was her purpose. In Shona, Shumira is really to serve. And I believe she came here to serve. She brought a different dynamic to our lives. And yeah, which brings in another part of maybe if I can go into that.
So please do go on.
When she passed away, like I said, it was really why, you know, I really had questions for God to say, why did you take her when I was ready? Why did you take her? And it took a lot of soul searching, a lot of time with God, I think. And I got to a point at the end of 2019 where I said to God, I want a purpose for my pain. Because I said she can't have come here for her to go and leave us in such pain.
So through the pain that you went through, you now wanted to find out what purpose was there for that pain.
Why did she come? You know? Maybe I think I've rushed to the end and I can take a step back. So I'm one person who's really keen on finding out things and understanding. And if I'm in a journey, I research, I look up, I try to understand. I don't just sit and take what people tell me. I want to find out. So I always laugh and I say Google is my friend.
Okay.
So, you know, so during that time when we lost Shumi, I really went down and I started trying to read about grief, understand how do you journey with this pain, you know, what do you do? I was on Facebook, I joined groups online that talk about grieving moms. And I did, you know, a lot of reading, and I remember finding that there's actually what they call a grief cycle.
Okay.
And so you go through different emotions, you know, anger, you go through denial, you go through depression, you go through guilt, and then there's acceptance.
Okay.
You know. So I started understanding the emotions I was feeling.
Okay.
Because I realized that I was actually going through that. And even though they call it a cycle, it's actually not a cycle. You kind of yo-yo back and forth between.
Back and forth, like a pendulum.
Yes.
Okay.
That's how I felt my journey was. It was either I would go to guilt and I would start questioning myself, had I not taken her earlier that morning when we realized she was struggling, because I went through that. I had spoken to a doctor, I had spoken to her physio, someone was supposed to come, and everything just didn't happen, you know. And so it became, but maybe we could have just hooked up her oxygen tank and put her in the car like we would have done before. I once had people come over from church to come, and it was after burial, maybe some weeks later, and they came to pay their condolences just to check up on us. And I told them, I said, you know what, guys, the best thing is not to say anything.
Okay.
Because when you say things, you're hurting me. You're not making me feel better. Because the things you're saying, I don't want to hear those things, because they don't take away the pain, you know. Like I said, you can't tell me that at least he's there. You can't, you know, if I ask you, who of your children would you want to go, which one would you pick?
Okay.
And so I would go through the guilt, then you go back to denial, then you go to anger, then you go to, you know, then you go to acceptance. Like wake up one day and you feel like, oh, it's okay. You know, you feel like you are there, but I think it was still too early in my journey to actually be there, you know. But what I understood is everybody grieves differently. Everybody goes through this in their own way, unique way. And I found my way. And one of the ways I found was I became so open about my grief. I opened up myself. So instead of bottling myself in and crying by myself, I think I had more people crying with me.
Okay.
Because what I did was I would post statuses. I would create videos, you know, of my baby. I would celebrate her even, you know. When we got to the 19th is a very special day now in our household. And so when we got to the 19th of each month, I would post something, I would say something. I found resources. I started posting even definitions of grief, you know. I started posting the do's and don'ts of grief. You know. And in opening myself, I found I had people now coming to me and actually sharing their stories
as well
with me as well. So it was almost, we could relate to each other and people could understand what I was feeling. And I almost feel like I freed people from where they were closed, because I now had people who had, for example, miscarried, and they would now talk about that because they had been so shut off, because no one actually allows you to grieve. You know, I think our culture is afraid of grief. Unfortunately, they think once you're crying and you're expressing yourself, they think something is wrong.
Okay.
Whereas in the openness, that's where you actually get the relief.
Okay. That is quite profound, Danai. To someone who's listening, Danai, who's going through grief right now, what tools can you share with them? I know you've shared how you've gone through the journey yourself, as you were sharing just now. I know there's someone that's out there listening and they're struggling with the loss of their loved one, and they may have lost a child, a relative, supporting a friend. What tools did you use in summary, to say these are the tools I used that enabled me to walk this path better?
Okay. So the tools I would say is, first I understood my emotions and I was willing to accept my emotions and express my emotions. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does.
Yes. So because we are taught so much to say, don't cry, shinga, if you cry, you're gonna cause this one discomfort. If you do this, you're gonna. So, but for me, I actually feel like I went against the grain. And I actually said, if I was crying, I would cry. If I was in pain, I would express that I was in pain. And in accepting that, I think it liberated me to feel what I was supposed to feel. Because when you don't feel, you know, just recently I was reading somewhere where they say, if you bury an emotion, it doesn't die.
It doesn't.
It grows.
And sometimes it pops up in places you're never expecting it.
Exactly. So that's one of the things. It was accepting that and understanding that this is something normal, what I'm going through. Also, another thing maybe that I haven't brought up was journaling.
Okay.
Okay, so journaling, it was me expressing what I felt, you know, but on paper.
Okay.
I wrote letters to God. I wrote letters to Shumi, you know, because then I could express myself. And I know I wouldn't get answers, but just putting down what I was feeling brought it out, you know. Also, something that I didn't bring up was I actually went to a school counselor for my daughter.
Okay.
And
Do
I
share
said
about that.
I wanted her to get counseling because she was
Okay.
only in grade 2 when her sister passed away. And
This
she
is
was
for the
very
other
close.
siblings?
Yes.
Okay.
And she was very close to, you know, to her young baby sister. And so I went to the counselor to say, please watch my daughter, she might need help. And when I was there, the counselor asked me, who are you seeing? And I never thought about that. And then she said, my door is open. Come in and let's have a chat. And I'm telling you, I appreciated that conversation so much. I was able to express what I was feeling to her that I had not been able to express to anybody else. And so I went in thinking I'm getting tools for my daughter, but I got tools for myself.
Wow.
And I sat and we talked, and out of her talking with me, that's where she actually encouraged me to journal. So she said, you know, write down, you know, she said, when you keep thoughts in your head, it's like a hamster in a cage with that little circle. So the hamster keeps rolling the circle, but they're not going anywhere. That's the same thing with your thoughts. But if you bring them out, you liberate yourself.
That's powerful.
And I honestly appreciated that. I started journaling. I started writing letters to my daughter. I started writing letters to God. And I only saw her twice, actually, because that very first time, and then another day when I really felt I needed someone to talk to, I went and I sought her out and we spoke, and I would recommend that to anybody. Counseling, I would say any day, especially when you are grieving.
Okay.
Because we tend to bottle up our emotions because everybody around us doesn't want to share with us because they are afraid, you know.
Or they don't know how to handle it.
Exactly. They don't know how to handle it. So just going and having counseling, speaking to someone who is going to listen to you with no judgment, with no preconceived thoughts, but is willing for you to just pour out, I would say that makes a difference. And also, in talking to someone, I also had a very close friend who we were grieving together.
Okay.
But we didn't know how to help each other, you know. And we started to just have lunch dates. So we made an appointment every specific day. I forgot it was a Tuesday. We would go and sit and have lunch. So the idea was, let's take ourselves away from this environment and let's go sit somewhere else where it's different and we can just sit and talk. And if we want to talk, if we don't want to, but I'm telling you, that made a difference.
It was therapeutic.
That was very therapeutic. And also, I would also say that too, if you're helping someone who's grieving, have time with them. Just take them out of the place where they are. And yes, I just created a different atmosphere. It was something to look forward to as well. And yeah, it really, I think that really made a difference. And yeah, I think those, you know, knowing your emotions, accepting them, feeling them, and understanding that you are not going to be stuck in one place.
Okay.
You're going to move. You know, the ultimate goal of grief is to be able to get to a place of acceptance. And acceptance does not mean you're going back to the old self, but it means you're going to a new self. Because out of all that you've journeyed and what's happened, you're never going to go backwards.
True.
You're going to a different place.
True. It is also important to note that acceptance is not necessarily saying that what happened is okay, but it's taking the situation as it is now and moving forward with it. It's finding the new normal for yourself and for your family. Thank you.
Exactly. And so I'm going to, like I said this at the beginning and now I'm bringing it in. So in December of 2019, I got to a point where I just said, Lord, I want a purpose for my pain. I don't understand. I don't believe my daughter came for us to just bury her and be in this pain. You know, I want a purpose for this pain. And in January of 2020, a baby was born who looked exactly like Shumi.
Okay.
Meaning
I'm
she
a
had a
bit confused.
bilateral cleft lip and palate.
Okay.
Yes, so a cleft is an opening in the front of, a cleft lip is an opening in the front of the mouth, and the palate is opening of the upper roof of the mouth. So a baby was born who looked exactly like her, and I was the first person that was called.
Okay, this is from another family?
Another family. It was a family. It was, I knew the aunt to the child. So the aunt phoned me and said, my sister just had a baby. You know, and the interesting conversation is, I still remember this conversation so much. It was, my sister has a baby who looks exactly like Shumi, you know. And I knew exactly what she meant, you know. And so I asked, what have they done? Where are they? What's happening? You know. And we had a conversation, gave me the number of the mother. I phoned them. We spoke. They didn't believe what I was explaining to them. You know, it's normal, you know. And then I met them the next day. And I went to them with the pump, a bottle, things, tools for them to use, because I knew the journey.
You knew the journey, yeah.
That
you're
they
now
were
able
walking.
to help
And
someone else.
Yes. And that just brought a different purpose to my life. It opened my eyes to something I would never have thought I would be doing. Unless Shumi had come.
So where are you now with, it sounds like it's a project that's still ongoing?
Yes, it is. It is. You know, I say this to a number of people. I say, when God wants you to do some things, sometimes He'll nudge you and you don't move. And sometimes where the word says He uses all things for the good, that comes in as well. Because out of my pain and out of my grief, God gave me a different purpose and a different vision, and I believe it's for His good. So I started a trust in 2021, which is called Shumiro Sarah Crystal Magandi Trust, named after Shumi.
That's beautiful.
And the purpose of the trust is to offer psychosocial support to mothers, to babies, to fathers, you know, anybody who's cleft affected. I am there to walk with them the journey, to provide them with information. My aim is really to do intervention at birth, to help them know how to take care of the baby, get them to know where to get the operations, and just be a support group for them. I found this analogy of a jar with a ball inside. And what it said was, you know, initially as you grieve, you feel like the ball keeps hitting the sides of the jar. You know, the pain is just so intense. It keeps hitting the sides of the jar. But as you walk along the journey, the grief doesn't change. But you, the jar, you grow bigger.
And bigger.
Do you understand?
Yes.
You learn to live with the grief, such that the ball does not hit as hard and as closer as
That's
it was
powerful.
hitting before.
Yeah, that's
Now it's like
powerful.
it will travel a distance before it hits there, and travels before it hits
And
there.
sometimes it doesn't
and
hit
sometimes
the
it
edge.
doesn't reach there exactly. So for me, that really made a lot of sense. So the pain is still there, you know. Nothing can ever change that. My baby died, and that loss is real. But I've grown
Like
bigger,
that jar.
like the jar. And now I am able to walk this journey in a different way. I'm able to relate my story. I'm able to function. But the ball does come and hit at certain times, you know, especially birthdays, certain number days, like I said, you know, but it's no longer as intense
As it was before. That's powerful, Danai. You know, I'm really grateful. As even I'm just seated here listening to you of the impact that this is making upon the mothers, the families that are affected by cleft lip, and the change and the transformation that you're bringing to those families. It is amazing, Danai. Well done for doing that.
Thank
And
you.
for heeding to the call of God upon your life as well. Do join us for the next episode as we continue in developing wholeness within us. Thank you.